It's now the middle of the 9th century, only 50 years or so since Lindisfarne. Word of Europe's removable wealth has spread. Norse families, villages, and whole communities band together to build longships. They plan to improve their station at the expense of the unwitting people across the sea.
All the Spaniards later, when they came to America, they were looking for gold, but the Vikings were looking for silver, and silver was the great thing to them, and a lot of the religious implements, crosses, and the various things that one finds in a monastery were made out of silver.
The Viking factions head out across the sea with no single ruler to unite them. Their fleets swell sometimes to scores of ships. Each fleet still acts independently, making the onslaught all the more difficult to stop. As reputations of individual Viking leaders begin to grow, so too do their ambitions. Europe is theirs for the taking.
Europe is an odd continent in that it is crisscrossed by rivers that are all navigable. Unlike North America or Africa or some of the others, which only have a few very large rivers, Europe has many. So almost any large body of water that the Vikings could take their vessels down, remember they're narrow and they're long and they don't take a lot of water.
One of the first major river attacks comes in 845 AD at the hands of a notorious Viking leader named Ragnar, a Dane. With a fleet of 120 ships, he seizes upon the legacy of Lindisfarne with a vengeance. His highway to battle, the same. His target, Paris. Before they even get to the city, Ragnar's Vikings decimate the French advance forces on the banks of the Seine, marching their French captives to a hideous end.
They were basically terrorists, and they relied on the terror to ease the way quite a lot. You know, they didn't want to do any more work than they had to, so it'd be as awful as possible. There was a famous Viking who was known as the child lover because he would not throw babies into the air and spit them on his sword as they came down. I mean, these were not nice guys.
It is said that Ragnar's Vikings hang 111 captured soldiers that day. A local monk named Ermentarius describes the Viking onslaught and devastation that continues for decades along the Seine and Loire rivers and beyond. The number of ships grows, he writes. The endless stream of Vikings never ceases to increase. Everywhere the Christians are the victims of massacres, burnings, plunderings. The Vikings conquer all in their path, and nothing resists them.
When the large Viking fleet sails down the Seine River and proceeds on Paris, this huge town that is well defended, the king of France, who is residing in Paris, chooses instead of facing it and the possible destruction that could come from facing the Vikings, actually decides to buy them off.
The King of France, Charles the Bald, pays Ragnar nearly 6 tons of silver and gold bullion so the raiders would leave and never come back. It has the opposite effect. As word spreads that such loot and tribute can be had, that land and goods are everywhere, the pillaging of Northern Europe and the continent continues with fervor.